And I believe that we've gone live. Hello, everybody. We've got a little bit of Leeds United news to get through, which is not exactly ideal. So, Leeds United were looking down the barrel of a match against. Let's have a little bit of a quick think. Hold on, I just need to fix things as well. Leeds were looking down the barrel of a match against Burnley, where we thought that we'd be able to do fairly well because we've played Burnley last season. We looked better than them in basically all of the matches, and it didn't always necessarily work out for us, and Parker ball happened, but we eventually got where we got to. However, now, different side for us, different side for them. They've got a bit of a weaker defence, they lost some of the better assets, and ideally we'll be able to do something with that, and things were looking a little bit better all the way up until we found out something from Fabrizio Romano. Now, I know a lot of people like to sort of follow the thesis that Fabrizio Romano is normally full of crap and only gets stuff from agents. However, when it comes to making a definitive statement on something, he tends to be right. Primarily because he gets that information from the agents and from the players and all this kind of stuff. And in this specific instance, he's saying that Noah Okafor will be out for 7 to 10 days with an injury. That isn't exactly a questioning thing. That isn't a bit of a question mark over Noah Okafor is a doubt for the match against Burnley. No, this is just straight out Noah Okafor will not be available for the match against Burnley, and being 7 to 10 days, let's have a look at when our next matches are. That also takes him out of the West Ham match, which is 7 days from right now. So in the event that it is 7 days, even then he will be a doubt for the match against West Ham in a week's time. This isn't exactly what we wanted to see at the minute from the Leeds United fan perspective. This is a little bit terrifying because the current sort of attacking vibe and the attacking feeling was that the club was in an okay-ish position if players were fit. So Okafor, very, very good on the left wing, will be able to do a little bit of damage to opposing sides and hopefully cause them some problems. On the right flank, you've got James, who brings that pace and that sort of direct action. You've got Aronson, who can do the sort of defensive winger stuff, doing a lot of pressing. You've got Nonto, can play there, can play on the left. And then you hit a very, very, very big injury crisis. And these injury crises aren't exactly common, because if they were, then you wouldn't call it a crisis. But all at the same time, we don't have Dan James available. He's maybe going to be in the squad depending on how we performed in training today, but the decision for the first 11 was going to be made after training today. You've got Willie Nonto, who we know is out. In addition to that, we've got Brandon Aronson, who is very, very, very jet-lagged at the minute because he just got back into the country at the very, very end of Wednesday or early on Thursday and had like 2 training sessions. It's not a good situation to be in for Leeds right now because there's a lot of injury problems, there's a lot of fitness problems, and it's going to be a little bit of a struggle for us to really sort of impart that attacking side of the game onto Burnley. Thankfully, and this is a very sort of tenuous thankfully, it's not exactly a big thing to be able to hold on, but thankfully we're in a position where at the very least we know that that defensive structure is still going to be there. We know that we still have our entire back four because they are still fit, they are still healthy, there is no one out from there. From the midfield, there is no one out that played in that last match. It's just that top end of the pitch. In addition to that, Perry is maybe a question mark for making the squad. Will probably make the squad, won't make the first 11, because I know that question's going to pop up. I'm not going to do a full sort of preview thing right now. The plan for that is going to be to do it later on. The idea was always to let's do a preview thing in the evening, that'll be quite nice and that'll take us into the weekend. However, we've since been hit by this injury and this sort of was worth a little bit of a discussion. Hello, Ricky. Patrick says, with all our wide injuries, I'd love to see Beale come in, play 3 at the back, use Bogle and Goodmanson as wing-backs and DCL, Piru as a front 2. Let's take it to Burnley, unlikely it would be nice. I don't know if that necessarily works though, because we already sort of do play a 3 at the back when in possession. In possession, it is already Ampadu drops in, you've got 3 defensive players, Goodmanson bombs on, Bogle bombs on. We are functionally already doing that when we have the ball. So I see the argument for rejigging things, but I'm really not sure that that is necessarily going to be the way forward. In addition to that, I'm going to stand by something that I said over on Jer's stream on Big Up the other day, which was, to be honest with you, when you've got a player that's playing as well as Bogle can in the position that Bogle is in, you don't make them change position. It reminds me of every single time that various England managers and Liverpool managers were like, Trent Alexander-Arnold is a fantastic right back, so you know what we're going to do, we're going to play him in midfield. I half got the idea, but it wasn't an idea that necessarily worked, and it's something that we could maybe not fall into the trap of ourselves. And I think he plays in the three before Beale. I'm not entirely sure. Again, he sort of already is, but when we're in possession, it's a case of one of that three goes into midfield, and if they're not going into midfield, that doesn't need to be Ethan Ampadu anymore. For me, the entire thing is a little bit complex and has been further complicated by the fact that we will no longer have Noah Okafor available for this game. I think he was our best creative asset in recent weeks. So if I have a quick look at FB Ref, and I'm going to go to Leeds United, and I'm going to go to... Do I go chances created? Do I go shots creating actions? I'm not sure. Let's go goal and shot creation, shall we? And if we saw per 90 stats, shot creating actions per 90... Yeah, Noah Okafor in terms of the players that goes in those wide areas is our best by a reasonably comfy margin. 3.5 shot creating actions per match, fantastic. A little bit less than Anton Stach, which I found quite interesting, but he's clear of Aronson, who's the next down at 2.7. He's clear of James with a 2.1. He's clear of Nonto with a 1.8. Clear of Harrison with a 1.3, but Harrison you can't really judge at the minute because he's not played that much in terms of actual matches. He's not really started a game yet. So I think the loss of Noah Okafor is potentially going to be a little bit of a problem for us in this one specific situation. There's also a little bit of conversation to be had around something that Daniel Farke mentioned in his press conference that has been sort of brought back into the loop in this situation, which is a question around player egos and agents and stuff. He sort of mentioned how he doesn't like a player with a bit of an ego. And for me, for this to have been announced via Fabrizio Romano rather than via the club, because I feel like the club having the ability to control the flow of information coming out of the club is a kind of important thing. Like, it's ultimately their right to say this player is injured, this player is injured, this player is injured. For Okafor to have, a few weeks ago, gone off sort of on his own and done that chat with The Athletic, being like, I'm going to force my way into the Swiss side. For him to then go, okay, I'm going to go to Romano, and Romano is going to be the one that announces that I'm not available for the next match, that's not great. That's a little bit of a sort of player power situation, and I feel like there's maybe a reason for it coming from Noah Okafor, but that doesn't mean that I'm necessarily the happiest with it, because it is a little bit of a weird move to me. And I'm not 100% sure how it makes me feel. Unless Dan James can do 60 minutes, I think it'll be Aronson and Harrison. It's looking like that could be the case, yeah, because we know Nonto isn't ready because of that hernia problem. So if I'm going to give a rough idea of who I think that 11 is going to be, Darlow, we know he's in because Farke effectively told everyone this. Probably Bogle. I'm not going to say that it's ideal to change the Rodon and Strauch pairing because they are one of the better pairings in the Premier League at the minute in terms of expected goals against. That is something that you don't necessarily just break up because someone's been good on international duty. I know there's going to be a lot of arguing for Beale, but I don't think that's an argument that necessarily holds all of the weight in the world. Gudmundsson is an obvious pick. In midfield, I think with Tanaka having very, very, very recently gotten back from Japan, you go Stach, Longstaff, Ampadu doing the dropping in thing that we mentioned. That's where it gets tricky though. Because in the 9, for me, it's kind of got to be Calvert-Lewin. Because we know that Calvert-Lewin is going to do the same job that Calvert-Lewin does every single time. Beyond that, Aronson starts out on the right. You wouldn't want him to, but he might have to. And then out on the left, it's kind of got to be Harrison. Because the feeling that you got from Daniel Farke in that press conference was that Dan James was not ready to do a full 90 minutes. He wasn't ready to start. And I don't think if a player isn't ready to do 90 minutes, like physically, you don't start them, because what if there's a series of various incidents that mean you can't use your subs when you were planning on taking Dan James off? Because if that happens, you just invite even more problems. Has Metch played on the wing? I know it's not ideal, but maybe an option. He has a bit. So if I have a look for Metch, there we go. Check his profile. Accept and continue. If I could find that little bit of info that I'm looking for. You know what I'm looking for, FBref, as well. You still want me to have it. All seasons, right. So, in terms of all of his matches combined, he has played a little over 230 games of football, which, you know, not bad. That's a decent amount of football. Of those, he's played a total of 19 times on the wing. Well, 19 times out on the left. And I think that would be a case of, you probably pick Jack Harrison because he's more familiar with that side, and on the other flank, you've got your right winger. He's played 15 times there, which again, not brilliant. And Aronson has been a very, very, very big part of the way that we've been playing recently. If we land in a situation where Brendan Aronson is not fit and healthy and not ready to go, then a whole new can of worms opens up. Because in the event that Brendan Aronson isn't fit and healthy, what's the options? The option at that point does become, it's going to have to be Metcher. But Aronson was bringing so much to the defensive side on that flank that completely throws Byram's game off as well, because Metcher doesn't quite press in the way that Aronson does. And a lot of people will say, like, headless chicken and all this to Brendan Aronson, but the fact that he is absolutely everywhere all of the time puts a lot of pressure on defenders, and that's where they make mistakes, and that's where we win the ball back, and that's why we're one of the better pressing teams in this league, when we're not sitting back into that low block. Losing Okafor is a big structural problem for the side at the minute, and it spooks me a touch. But this was just a little bit of a quick stream to sort of cover all that. Maybe that's why Chambers was with the squad in the training video. I would probably agree with that if we're in a situation where we're seeing potentially Sam Chambers being dragged into senior training. Yeah, that implies that the issues on the wing are maybe quite significant and he might have to make the squad. Like, if you think of who's going to make the bench, it would probably go Perry, Beale, Byram, or Justin. Maybe Bornau. Then you're into your midfield, so you're talking Tanaka and Gruev, which is 5 or 6 of your squad, which probably leaves spot for Peru, spot for Metcher. And then you've got 2 places available, and Sam Chambers is the most senior of the youth players at this point in time, so that sort of makes a little bit of sense to me to do that. But hopefully we're able to match what we need to, because if we don't, that's going to be a little bit worrying. Anyway, I think I mentioned Bornau, but if I didn't, I meant to mention Bornau. Regardless. Anyway, this was just a fairly short stream to sort of get the news out on the Okafor stuff. I will also probably be talking about Okafor later on when I do a little bit more of a preview into the Burnley match and how it's an important match and what we can expect to see from Leeds and what we can expect to see from Burnley. But yeah, hope you all enjoyed the stream. If you did, please pop a like on it. That is massively appreciated. Very, very, very genuinely helps the channel, as does subscribing and becoming a channel member if you fancy. You don't have to, but the option's there. Regardless, hope you all enjoyed, and I will, FM26 has FIFA, it has the rights to international management. However, I will also get to that in the later stream, which is going to be a bit more chatty as well. Anyway, hope you all enjoyed, and I will see you later. Doodle.